Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where every other week, Dr. Ross, Christian, and I discuss strategies to manage money with our partners, share lifestyle ideas to live happier and healthier lives, and have some lighthearted laughs along the way. Thank you for joining today. This happens to be our inaugural Modern Husbands podcast. Every other week, Dr. Ross, Christian, Shale, myself are going to meet with a guest national thought leader to discuss strategies to manage money with our partners, share lifestyle ideas to live happier and healthy lives, and have some lighthearted laughs. So we are a brand new community. So you might be wondering what a modern husband is. And if you're listening and you support your partner's career ambitions, if you root for their career successes, if you respect your partner and want to help lead many of the efforts around the home and believe managing money responsibly is important, if you want to live a life full of experiences with your partner, you are a modern husband. Welcome to our community. Before we get started, I have to share and boast a little bit about our co-host. Dr. Ross is an assistant professor at the University of Kentucky, holds a PhD in human development and family science with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy, and a specialization in financial counseling and financial therapy practices. Christian Sherrill is the director of growth and advocacy at the Next Gen Personal Finance, whose mission to revolutionize the teaching of personal finance in all schools to improve the financial lives of the next generation of Americans. He's a Dartmouth grad who holds a degree in economics and Hispanic studies, and his wife, Chelsea, is an MD and an emergency medicine resident at NYU. And I'm Brian Page, founder of Modern Husbands and husband to my amazing wife, Hope Page. Dr. Ross, Christian, and I are all thrilled that fellow Modern Husband Advisory Board member, Dr. Brad Klontz, will be our expert guest today, which is our, again, inaugural episode. Dr. Klontz is a CFP expert in financial psychology, financial planning, and applied behavioral finance. And he's an associate professor of practice at Creighton University, co-founder of the Financial Psychology Institute, and managing principal of your Mental Wealth Advisors. And I have to add, is a best-selling author. He just released a book. We will get to that in a little bit. And finally, a member of the CNBC Financial Wellness Council. So we're going to talk to Dr. Klontz about why so many smart people make really bad decisions with money and why so many couples argue about money. Speaking of which, it's time to put Christian on the spot. Hate to do this, Christian, but we were talking earlier about our worst or our most disastrous dates. So you were digging way back into your college years, and you recalled a Valentine's Day. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. I don't know if I should say gladly I'll share this with you and the listeners, but I will dish up my worst date I've ever been on. And hopefully it will tell you a little bit about, how I exist in the world. So this is a relatable group of folks. I make lots of financial mistakes. And this is a perfect example of that. So this harkens me back to college years. I must have been 19 or 20. I've been dating a young lady at the time, and upon us came Valentine's Day. Y'all are aware of Valentine's Day. It's an annual holiday celebrating love, companionship, couples.
It's an unforgettable holiday, Christian.
Yeah. Truly.
Well,
supposed to be.
Supposedly an unforgettable holiday, but lo and behold, whenever this was years ago, I forgot about this annual tradition, this annual holiday celebrating Saint Valentine. And so I'm scrambling the morning of February 14th, it happens to be, for anybody wondering, when this takes place, February 14th.
I'll put that on my calendar.
Jot it down. Don't be like Christian. I wake up the morning of February 14th, and I remember that it's February 14th. It's past time to book dinner for me and my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah, those reservations normally a couple months in advance, right?
So they say. I'm scrambling, and so I find a place This is even more embarrassing. But at the time, I was living in an off-campus apartment. The restaurant that I booked was 2 flights of stairs down from said off-campus apartment. Booked the dinner. All is going okay. You know, we show up to the dinner. There's no evidence that I've forgotten about it until the day of. We have a fine meal and test out some new cuisines that we haven't had, and we're having a nice conversation, and it's all going fine until the bill comes. Not only am I just, I have no money. I'm working 3 jobs to try to, plus student loans and all the rest to try to get through school. But I've also forgotten my wallet. And
which before you continue, let's remind listeners, is only 2 stories up. But go ahead and proceed, Christian.
It's an important caveat there.
Somehow that solution that, just bound up the stairs, it didn't come to mind.
College.
It didn't present itself. Okay.
No. So midway through the dinner, I didn't think to take a bathroom break and just, bound up the stairs, of course. So this led to, a big blow up argument over money, responsibility, forgetfulness, boneheadedness, which I fully deserved. I was on the receiving end of that series of lectures and tirades. Yeah.
Was the Valentine's Day dinner with her the next year better?
I think at that point we were no longer.
Really?
There was a second one.
Christian, that surprises me. So, Dr. Ross, do we have time on this podcast to review what perhaps could have been done differently in preparation of a Valentine's Day? In your professional opinion, was this a modest mistake or what?
Well, knowing Christian, I think it was a modest mistake. I think it's, it's something that probably a lot of us have, just forgot things before. But there's always a certain element that we can always plan a little bit better. We can always be thinking ahead about what we should be doing. And I think most important is probably that you've learned something from it, right?
I tell you what our listeners have learned is that if you want a free meal, just to forget your wallet, I guess.
Well, if you want a free meal, don't go to dinner with Christian.
There you go. That's right.
All right, we need to bring Dr. Klontz on, but before we do, we have got to share just a couple dad jokes. I don't know why we do this, other than the fact that I'm slightly immature and I love to laugh. And it's our podcast, and us 3 can do what we want, right?
Yeah, corny jokes. Hopefully the folks don't turn off their podcast and go away before we hear from Dr. Klontz.
Let's hear it.
So I got an absolutely terrible one that's perfect for Brian. Are you ready, Brian?
I am ready.
Okay. Did you hear about the terrifying diets of dyslexic zombies?
You would think I would, because I live pretty close to where The Walking Dead is filmed, but no, I have not.
Watch out. They only eat Brian's.
That was good.
Watch out, Brian.
That was good.
Brains instead of brains.
All right, so I have one for our listeners. Christian, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so I had a rough July 4th weekend.
What happened, Brian?
I lost 3 fingers on my right hand and asked the doctor if I would still be able to write with it.
What did he say?
He said maybe, but he wouldn't count on it.
Oh.
All right.
Oh.
I think it's time to bring in Dr. Klontz and save us.
Listeners,
so.
It's been a great ride. It's been a great ride. We made it all of 10 minutes.
This podcast is brought to you by Modern Husbands. We are a community of devoted husbands of working spouses who share ideas to manage money, the house, and a life full of experiences. visit modernhusbands.com to learn more. An award-winning author in financial psychology and financial planning, applied behavioral finance. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Klontz, and probably ending our misery.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Where does your passion to help people manage money come from?
Well, unlike you, Christian, I do everything perfectly around money, and my wife and I never fight around money. Obviously I'm teasing, and that's really how I got interested in money is essentially for my own mess. And so having grown up lower income, my parents split when I was young, we didn't have much money. I was very acutely aware of the differences between having money and not having money. And I came to the conclusion that it was much better to have money than to not have money. And at an early age, I think I had a little scientist brain going on. I was trying to figure out, number one, why did my parents divorce? I was trying to figure that out. Because I didn't want to have that experience. And I was also trying to figure out why I come from a family of really hardworking, smart people, and just for generations, no money. And I was sort of struck with, what's that mindset? Because, some branches of my family have been here since the Mayflower. And it's like, seriously, like there's not one piece of land that is owned. I'm like, what's been going on for all these generations? So I was very curious as a kid I remember interviewing some of my friends' parents who happened to live in a nicer neighborhood. I thought they were rich. They were probably just like middle class, but I was like, I couldn't believe their houses and all this. And I remember even as in middle school, asking the dad, what do you do for a living? And how did you get that job? And I just remember being really curious about it. So that sort of sets the stage around why I was interested in it to begin with. And when I went to grad school, I remember going to the undergrad, to the Occupational Outlook Handbook. I decided I want to be a therapist. So I'm like, okay, which therapists make the most money? If I'm going to have to go through all this school, I want to pick that degree. But what really got me interested in the psychology of money was when I got out of grad school, I owed $100,000 in student loan debt. It was the only way to get through college. That was a lot of money at the time. I think it's still a lot of money. But this was like 20 years ago. And I saw a friend of mine make $100,000 in 1 year day trading. And I thought, well, this guy knew nothing about the stock market. And I'm like, well, I know nothing about the stock market. Yeah. So I can do this too.
So anyone can do it.
Exactly. Well, I saw him do it and he had no idea what he was doing. I remember him sitting at his computer going, I'm buying EMC, click. I'm like, what's that? He goes, I don't know. And actually he made 100,000 doing that, in a massive bull market. And I sold everything I had of value. And I'm like, I'm going to invest it all. I'm going to make 100,000. I'm going to pay off my loans and then I'll be set. And of course, 3 months into it, the tech bubble burst. And so I just caught it right there at the end. I did great for 3 months. I started to watch my money melt away. And I asked myself this question: why would a reasonably intelligent person do something so stupid with his money? That's what got me interested in the whole psychology of money field.
What are a few examples of why really smart people do make these bad financial decisions?
I think so. Fundamentally, it has really helped me to think about this with a cave person brain. Okay, so like the majority of our time on Earth as a species, like 99.99% of our time on Earth, has been us running around in hunter-gatherer tribes of 150 people, fighting for survival, trying to stick together. And I think that actually explains most terrible financial behaviors. For example, saving doesn't really work in a hunter-gatherer tribe. So first of all, you can only, save what you can carry, right? So that's not a whole lot of stuff. Secondly, if we're part of a tribe and all of a sudden I'm hoarding all the stuff, you three are going to be looking at me like, you're not really a team player here. You're not really part of the tribe, so we have this like anti-saving bias, I think, that is sort of built in, and which hurts us in terms of, because it feels selfish. And if you grew up in a lower income environment, you have that sense like I'm doing something wrong by saving money when other people around me don't have it. Like there's this inhibition to doing that, as well as all the sort of behavioral finance stuff, Dr. Ross, which I know you know all about. It's all the all of the ways that we survive, as a species are terrible for money. So all the biases come into play. So I think what's crazy is that there are actually people who do the right thing around money. That's the weird part. that is harder to make
That
sense of.
That's the abnormal thing, right?
Exactly. I truly believe that. So first of all, we're all crazy when it comes to money. We're just sort of built on this crazy structure on money. And then throw in your individual craziness based on your experiences growing up, based on your beliefs around money that you inherited from your family that go back for generations. And that's actually some of what I found is, one of the things I did is I went into the field of psychology, and I couldn't find any studies on the psychology of money, which was really bizarre. I couldn't, first of all, I sort of joke within a matter of a couple of weeks, I became the world's leading expert in psychology and money, only because psychologists didn't want to talk about money and didn't want to touch money and all of that. But what I did is I went home and I started to interview my family members. My poor mother, she had been through this before, where I stick a tape recorder in front of her. I'm like, why did you do this to me when I was growing up? And I interviewed my mom, I interviewed my dad. What was it like for you growing up around money? What was it like for grandma and grandpa? And I started to hear these stories that just blew my mind. So one of the ones that really helped explain why I was crazy around money, my grandfather lost all his money in the Great Depression. So didn't have much money, but went to the bank one day and all the money's gone and nobody's there at the bank anymore. And this happened at the beginning of the Great Depression. And so all of a sudden, that anxiety and mistrust about financial institutions that was sort of inherent in my family, like my mom never invested, she didn't trust it. It all started to make sense to me. It's like, this makes sense. And my grandfather, for his part, never put a dollar in the bank the rest of his life. He lived into his 90s and kept his money in a lockbox. That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what a terrible approach to wealth building, you know?
You're going to shoebox under the bed kind of thing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he did, because he was not going to let that happen to him again. He was not going to be traumatized like that again, ever. And so these family stories started to emerge, and my craziness around money started to make perfect sense. And and sort of the conclusion I got is, like, any reasonable person growing up in a family like that would have those beliefs. And for me, I call it a dysfunctional pendulum swing. And so I'm like, I'm not going to be poor like my family. They don't invest, so I'm going to invest. And so, not knowing what to do, I actually approached it in the worst possible way you can approach investing. Day trading and doing it in the like riskiest asset class that was in a bubble. I just did all the mistakes that somebody would do. It makes sense why I did it.
Do you see those same parallels with crypto?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would have been all in on crypto. I would probably convince my family members to invest in it, sell everything you own, because you hear these stories about people making money, right? And that's really kind of what got me passionate about social media a few years back. Is I saw these videos on TikTok of people like promoting like day trading. Right. I was so appalled. I'm like, no, this can't be back. And then I'm like, of course it's back. Duh. I mean, we're in another bull market. And so I started to like passionately make videos because, unfortunately people are experiencing the consequences of it now. But I like to think that I talked some people out of engaging in real like speculative moves around money. This is a poor mindset. Okay, this is a poor mindset. And it's quite literally from growing up poor. It's like, you don't know how wealthy people make money. You don't know how they invest money. You hear that they invest. You're sort of desperate to get rich quick, because not even get rich quick, but stop being poor quick is really what I think you're trying to do, right? You want to give a better life for your family. And so, not knowing any better, people are very vulnerable to those get rich quick type schemes and dreams.
Well, I see that all the time with my college students right now. They're all about get rich quick.
Christian just messaged me. He's got to step in and help his lovely wife with something, but he had a burning question for you, Dr. Klontz, before he leaves.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So this is hitting me like straight to my core. In Modern Husbands, we're talking about like individual financial decisions, but also decisions that we make as a team with our partners. So is there a secret to, managing money with a partner as a team without fighting, without arguing?
Yes. Well, there's only one right way to do money. And if you can just convince your partner to do it your way, you'll have no problems at all. I always sort of chuckle at these. I chuckle at these articles saying, you must have joint or separate accounts. I mean, the bottom line is, what matters is what you guys decide works as a couple. So that's the first thing. There is no like objective right way to do this. Okay. And step one is letting go of that and trying to like beat your partner in submission, with your money scripts and the right way to do it. But what I always encourage couples to do is sort of have the conversation that you had, I don't know, 4 dates in, 5 dates in, how many dates we should have that debate, where you said, I don't know, like, do you want to have kids? Like, I mean, at some point you have these types of discussions. We never have those discussions around money. And so when I work with couples in conflict around money, I like to take whatever it is, this thing that they're fighting about, which actually I don't really care about at all. It's just, of course, it's just one of the 100 things you're going to have to work out. And I like to kind of rewind and so that you as a couple can sit down and understand do you even understand your partner's like beliefs around money and their upbringing around money and what their mother and father taught them and what their deepest fears are around money and what their aspirations are around money. And I've worked with dozens of couples, and by going back and having that conversation, and if you do a good job of listening, all of a sudden your partner's crazy kind of beliefs around money are going to start making sense to you. And I make videos about this because, couples who are married have the highest net worth. Like, it's actually a great hack for increasing your net worth is being married. Of course, you need to stay married. But one of the benefits of having a partner is that they can help balance out your craziness around money. And my wife has certainly done that for me. Like, she's like, hey, should we buy a couch? And I'm like, hey, lawn chairs are fine.
Right. Yeah.
And I apparently I had an extreme position around money, which I wasn't very conscious of until I got in a relationship. And somebody's going, what? You only have 2 forks? And so we have the opportunity to balance each other out and be healthier. And that's what all the studies show too, is that your beliefs around money are actually healthier when you're partnered up.
I'm glad you shared the fact that it's okay to spend money too, because that was one of the challenges that my wife and I face. Is I'm really frugal, and I was really frugal to the extreme years ago, and we figured out like little tricks to maintain our happiness. Like when we go out to eat, for whatever reason, even though if I enjoy the meal or whatever it may be, when the bill comes and I see it, unless I'm Christian who forgot my wallet, I'm going to be like, it's going to ruin my night. Like, I just can't. I hate spending money. I have a physical reaction. Like I get a headache if I see that. But even though I don't see it, because my wife takes the bill and she's the one that takes care of it and looks at it, even though I know that money's leaving our checking account, it doesn't bother me unless I see it. And I think it's important that we continue the conversation about maybe other ways in which partners can work together and balance each other's strengths and weaknesses out. Dr. Ross, feel free to jump in if you have any other suggestions or ideas. And I know Christian, speaking of working with our spouses, he has to bail. Christian, until next time, we will see you soon.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
I think it's always funny too, like where you get into these situations and you're like, I'll spend money on this thing, but I won't spend it on this other area in my life. Like, and some of it just doesn't make sense. Like, I will buy these products because I feel like I need them, but I won't spend any money on replacing, this thing that I use every day.
When you're talking to couples about managing money, what are some examples of like how they can pull together like shared goals, or recognize where they could naturally work well together. So rather than tackling the tough stuff, can you give us like a couple, tips that our listeners would find useful that they could apply right now?
Yeah. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to schedule a meeting. Actually, it's better if you just spring it on them. Like, don't even tell them it's coming, but say, let's do a budget and we can examine each other's spending and try to cut out all the joy in each other's lives. And we're going to start with you. Okay. So let's sit down and see all the spending. Let's review all your spending this last month. And I can sit back and tell you, come on, a hair dry. You don't need to color your hair. What are you doing? Like, look how much money we can save. Like, I'm being facetious, but this is sort of the budgeting experience a lot of couples have. Like, of course you don't want to sit down and do a budget. Your partner doesn't even like some of the stuff you're doing. And we get sucked into that trap. And of course you want to avoid the entire conversation. Like, what a terrible emotional experience that is. By the way, it's a terrible emotional experience for anyone, let alone with a couple who are doing that to each other. And so what I strongly suggest is you sort of flip the script on it and you do a spending plan. It's a little bit of a, mnemonic trick here, but doesn't that sound more fun? Like, hey, let's sit down and think about what matters most to us. What do we want? Okay, so you have money, you have resources coming in. Where do you want to allocate those resources? What excites you? Start identifying your top goals and see if you can align goals or at least support each other in those goals. And I find it to be a much better emotional experience And if you can get more specific about those goals and visualize them, this is a great hack. We did a study where we had people do that, and we saw a 73% increase in savings behavior once you got really clear on your goals. And this was only just an hour of coming up with some like vision boards around these exciting goals. Activate your emotional brain in a positive way in your relationship around money versus a scarcity way where, you're frustrated, you're upset, you're not happy with each other. So I like to start with the spending plan, come up with a real shared, exciting vision of what you want money to do for you in your life.
So where you're spending the money instead of just where you're taking the money away from the things you enjoy.
Yeah, that's it. And the emotional experience is like, we've already identified, these are our top 6 goals, and we share 3 of them, but a couple are yours, a couple are mine, and we're going to allocate our money in those areas. And then you go, okay, so now where do we want to make cuts? Because you've already identified what matters most. And it's a real fascinating sort of emotional experience because you've just said all this other stuff doesn't matter as much. And so if you want to make sure that you're going to reach those goals, you're going to decide how much you're going to allocate each month toward those goals. And you can balance it out, on goals that you might not share. And then you can jointly kind of move towards cutting it. It's a very different experience.
Very much so. So, and to Dr. Klontz, I know you have a new book that's out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, your listeners probably don't want to buy it at all. It's called.
I'm sure that's not true.
Well, it could be. It's called The Psychology of Financial Planning. And so if you're not in the financial service industry, you might like it if you're a nerd, but it's designed for that audience.
So I know I'll like it.
I think you'll like it a lot, Bruce. I think you'll like it a lot. But my previous book, A Money Mammoth, is the one that I think resonates with most like non-professionals. And it talks about that cave person brain. And it talks about, your money scripts and what they predict for you around your future, as well as I did my best to take the stuff we did in the studies to get people to increase their savings rates and all that and put it into narrative form with instructions to have people do that on their own. So that was my attempt with Money Mammoth.
And I have one final question. You brought up money scripts quite a few times, and not all of our listeners they're not going to know what that is. So can you maybe share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so money scripts is the term that we've been using to describe these beliefs you have about money, many of which are inherited from your family. And we've done studies on this now with tens of thousands of people. And, your beliefs around money here, big shocker out there, like what you believe around money predicts your income, your net worth, your behaviors around money, your credit card debt. And so it really is very valuable exercise for you to actually sort of dig in there and try to figure out what are your beliefs and assumptions around money. We have tests to do that, but another way to do it is to just think back to what are the 3 things your mother taught you about money? What are the 3 things your father taught you about money? What are your early experiences around money? What lessons did you walk away from related to those? How are they helping you? How are they hurting you? Because if you can shift your beliefs around money, and by the way, studies have shown that like ultra wealthy people have different beliefs around money than middle class people and people who don't have as much money. And so as a student, for me, of wanting to increase my net worth throughout my life to give my kids a better experience than I had, I was very curious in the psychology of wealthy people, especially self-made wealthy people who were able to climb the ladder. Like people started out exactly where I did. Some people climb the ladder, some don't. And, studies show that there's a difference in their psychology. And so to me,
what? Can you give us a specific example?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's happening is we're being lied to on social media around how rich people actually spend their money. And this is something I can get that really upsets me. I'm just going to be straight up with you.
Keeping up with the Joneses kind of mentality is just.
That's absolutely it. And so keeping up with the Joneses. So our studies have found that the ultra wealthy are the opposite of keeping up with the Joneses. It's really fascinating. So people are really focused on status around money. For example, if you ask them how much money they made, they will admit in a test, psychological test, they'll say, well, I'd probably tell you I make more than I actually do. Now, those people have less money and less net worth. The ultra wealthy people, they say, I would probably tell you I make less than I actually do. And that's a real mind bender because you don't see that on Instagram. You see people leaning up against Mercedes and flashing, wads of cash. It's sort of crazy, but people think that's what people do, or they watch, reality TV. They think, oh, that's what rich people do. That's actually not what rich people do. Those are people who are perhaps on that cycle of spending all the money they inherited, which is a common thing, or they're just social media people get paid to do that, right? It goes back to the millionaire next door. Like most people who are millionaires in the United States, most are self-made, most are employees, by the way, they're not entrepreneurs. They're just religiously setting money aside each month into that boring 401k. Yeah. We have hundreds of thousands of people becoming millionaires every year from those boring 401ks. So if you don't have one, get one, fully fund it. That's how most people are getting there.
I'm glad you said that, because we've, Dr. Ross and I, Christian and others, we've talked about how, frankly, it's dangerous on TikTok and Instagram, and like the way that they portray wealth building and money is clearly not something that is sustainable, and it's not something that is realistic. And you brought up the point that matters most is get into your 401k, match it, get to if you can, contribute the max, and just get into index funds. Like this idea that people are stock pickers or they can buy crypto at the right time is really a, kind of a dangerous pursuit toward, I guess, what the Joneses have. So Dr. Klontz, thanks for coming in today. For our listeners, we're going to put links to his books on our website at modernhusbands.com. And thank you for our listeners. Please visit modernhusbands.com for ideas to manage money, the house, and a life full of experiences with your partner. And you can also subscribe there to future podcasts. Once again, thank you, Dr. Klontz. Hopefully we will have you on again soon.
Thanks for having me, Brian, Dr. Ross, Christian.
Thanks,
appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Dr. Klontz.